We are too.
Did Brian come back? Okay. All right. I'd like to welcome everybody to the special meeting, and we will now call this meeting to order at 6:37. 7 minutes behind because Mr. Heisel stole my parking space. Just kidding.
I'm smiling.
So, with that being said, if you would stand for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. You know the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Item number 1, adoption of the agenda.
Just a quick question. When, of course, these meetings, we've done Google Meet, and then we've allowed other people to be there in Google Meet. How do we go about making that decision? Because I understand some people were thinking that they were going to be able to get on Google Meet tonight, and it's not available tonight. So I don't know if that's an announced thing. I just think that
In the past, it's been announced, but tonight we're trying to get back to some semblance of normalcy, so we're going to start doing in-house meetings.
we didn't announce that there wasn't going to be. So.
I don't know that we announced that there was. It's being broadcast live. Everybody's gonna have-
Right, I understand that, but, obviously, we've always had stakeholders, I believe, that want to make comments during meetings, and I think it caught some people by surprise. I'm just saying for future, I think we ought to at least announce this is how we're going to do it.
And the others you've been putting in that this will be, and so it just wasn't in there this time. Adoption of the
Motion.
I'll second.
motion by Mr. Tobey, second by Mrs. Richardson. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
I'm second.
Richardson. Public comments?
All right.
Okay. Item number 2, return to school update. This is something new that we're doing before you start, Paul. This is something that Paul and I have talked about. This is just something that he's taken questions from the past meetings that we've had as a board that were asked during those meetings, and then questions that were emailed in, talked to his committee members. I think they're all here.
I've got copies of that.
Okay. And then he's answering them instead of, because I've gotten a lot of feedback from the public that says they're just getting totally confused during our meetings because it's within the questions when they're trying to get an update and they're getting lost. So this is something for just Paul to talk to, answer questions that have been asked in the previous meetings, update, do all that. With that being said, I would also like to put out a reminder that we do have policies in place as well to follow a certain chain of command when you're going to ask these questions. Because I think it's kind of been all over the place. I know I've received some questions that then whenever I message them back and I've asked, have you spoke with your principal? Have you spoke with Mr. Christie? Well, no. He has no idea if the questions are even being asked. So I would like to remind everyone to try to go through their chain of command before, because they're probably going to have the answer a whole lot quicker than what I'm going to have the answer at this time. So with that being said, Mr. Christie.
The questions you have are 16 that were asked at the last board meeting. That was 16 questions that the was posed at the last board meeting. So what you have in front of you are the answers to those, the questions and answers to those through our reentry task force. I wanted to talk about, first off, principals right now are currently submitting to us. They have until Wednesday to complete those. All principals at every building is submitting a reentry plan for their school. And we plan on going as a task force, and I'll invite you all if you want to go. We're going to meet, we're going to be picked up on a bus. We're going to go through the protocol of what the students would do if they got on a bus. We'll be seated like the kids would be seated on the bus. We'll wear masks like the students would wear on the bus. We'll enter the school as the students would enter the school. And then we're going to look at things if they were to test positive, what would happen, where would the room be, the isolation room. We're going to go through the whole process. Those are scheduled for, the plans will be in on Wednesday. We're going to review those plans in-house here on Thursday and Friday. And then the next following week, starting on the 21st, the 22nd, and the 23rd, we'll be going to visit every school, 3 schools a day. And we're going to go through those plans. The first time, we're just going to take this group. Maybe if we do it a second time, as we go through, we may open that up and take a few more people, maybe some parents that might want to come, some things like that. But we want to go through a first run just to make sure that we've got everything as it's supposed to be according to the CDC guidance. So that's what we're going to be checking for on those 3 days. There is a process. If a student comes in, and these are questions you'll see on the website. If you've been on our website in the last few days, you'll see when it opens up, there's a bar across there that has frequently asked questions. We're now taking questions from staff, from the general public, and when we get a question asked, we answer those, we post those questions and those answers on the website. And I think on there now, there's probably 20 or 25 right now on there. We did receive some more questions over the weekend. We're going to try every 48 hours, pull the questions in that we've gotten, and answer those and get them posted on the website. Now, eventually, our websites, we get more questions. We're going to break it out into athletics, academics, staff, food services, transportation. So if you've got questions in those areas, you just go to that area, and the questions can show up there. And so we're working on developing as we get more questions, because just a long list of questions, it could get pretty tedious to continue to go through those if they were all just in one place. So we're going to try to break them out. The plans, I want to put this out, that if a student comes to school and they test positive, or they come in, they come in and they show a temperature, they'll be removed from the group for just a couple of 3 minutes, and then they'll be checked again. If their temperature remains above 100.4, then the parents would be called. The parents would come to pick the student up, and they would take them home. That student has to remain at home for at least where they're fever-free for 72 hours. And that's with no fever-reducing medications. So it has to be on their own. They have no fever for 72 hours. Once that's obtained, then the parent, whenever that happens, they can come back to school, but the parent brings them back to the school, and they get rechecked. And if their temperature is okay, then they proceed on with the rest of the students. If they check with a above temperature again, then they have to go back home with the parent, and we'll have, from the health department, we've got a packet, we're getting a packet of information from the health department that will give them directions on what to do, on how to seek medical help, and what they should do from that point. We cannot require anyone to be tested. No staff member nor no student. We can't require them to be tested.
Question about that then, Mr. President. Because I know in the business world, and talking to some people out there, basically their policy comes up, if you are with a high temperature, you're required to stay away from work for 2 weeks unless you bring in a test that shows you are negative. I just think, there's a lot of manipulation that could go on with fever-free, and I'm not sure how we're handling, we got this for students, how are we handling that for teachers?
Same thing for teachers, only the teachers wouldn't be put in the COVID room to wait for the parents to get there. The teachers.
We're sure that follows the guidelines?
That's CDC policy guideline. That's healthy back to school
policy. I don't know how you guys
policy.
are doing it, Mr. Heisel, but I know from a couple other people that have worked there, they're saying that they're out 2 weeks unless they bring back a negative test. I think people can be manipulated quite a bit, and, so I don't know. That one thing there concerns me a little bit.
Under the CDC guidelines that we're working with the local health department, at their direction, this is, I mean, they've already looked at this, they've approved it, and this is what we were instructed to do. If they test positive the second time, the parent has to take them back home. At that point, they're given the directions from the health department on how to seek medical, and from there, the health department determines when they come back. Now, that may take longer at that point, but if they do go out after that and are tested positive, then the CDC or the local health department steps in. They do the contact tracing at the school. And anyone is deemed to have been in contact with a student or a staff member, and their point of emphasis that they use to deem whether they've been in contact is within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes. They will do the contact tracing. We don't do any of that. The health department does that. And from there, then they will be, it's 14 days at that point for anybody that's deemed to have been exposed.
Mr. Perry, I'll give you a quick answer. At our place, where anybody who's suspect like that, we're encouraging them strongly to go ahead and seek medical consultation. And the reason for that is if they do that, so they're going to get paid. Didn't mean to discount anything you were saying. I just wanted to answer Mr. Perry's question.
Well, I'm certain that when we have one comes in the first day with the temperature, we're going to, when the parent comes to pick them up, we're going to advise that they seek medical medical advice also, but it's only required once they come back that second time. I won't go through all of those questions. I sent you all the copy where we are athletically. KSHAA met on Friday, put some new guidelines out with the restrictions that we're under. We were going to be under until July the 16th. They've now extended that to August the 3rd. And in addition to that, some places, I don't think that we were doing it here necessarily, but some places were having some conditioning for football, and those that might have been going to play basketball, they were going to do some additional conditioning for them. So they've kind of said now that they're going to limit students to only 6 hours a week coming into the school, coming in for conditioning at this point. And that's until August the 3rd, and they're saying that by August the 3rd, they'll have more guidelines if that's going to extend any further or what those changes might be. You also saw the only sport that we have that will start to take place is going to be golf. And there's some pretty stringent guidelines there for those that might be hosting a golf match. So, there is the possibility that you could continue with dance and cheerleading tryouts, because those are individuals, and if so, those will be brought in individually and socially distanced from the judges that might be making the decisions whether they make the team or not. But if you all got any other questions about the back to school part, this next couple of weeks will be really busy for us with each school, individual school.
Who's their chair people? So what are you up there?
I'm academics.
Social and health.
Special population. I'm kind of a combination of all of them. I'm the
Nurse.
from Baker.
Gotcha.
Logistics.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, dog, you're over there in no man's land.
They have listed, he's got a list on page 2.
Well, just for being due purposes, I wanted them to be able to.
You're here in case you have any other questions about any of the other areas, what we're doing in those areas.
Do you all have any updates you all want to add? On your,
We've done our NTI plan, and that's what, we were early, we had to be, in order to actually be a part of that process, we had a deadline of June 15 that we had to meet, so that's what came to you all. I think we submitted that at 8:30 that evening. By 9 o'clock on Wednesday, that same week, that was approved. They did not ask for any single thing with that. We were automatically approved, which we're happy about. We're working on the logistics pieces, what that's going to look like, especially with the laptops. Mr. Payson and his TRTs and I are meeting on Wednesday to kind of go over some things as to how we can
put that into place and make that, kind of streamline that process and make that something that we can really extend the learning process, not just do review, but really continue that learning process out. So we have that meeting on Wednesday to kind of talk about that. And so that's kind of where we're at. We're continuously putting pieces into place as to what this is going to look like from the guidance that we have on in-person, for what this would look like from a distance learning perspective. And there's a couple of things Mr. Dace and I are going to talk about with distance learning as to what that might look like, so that maybe we have, instead of a two-pronged scenario, we might be able to have a three-pronged scenario and give students even more choice. But that's what we're going to talk about on Wednesday with the TRTs, and just see that it's feasible before we kind of make a promise that, we can't keep them. We just don't have the technology or the wherewithal to go in that direction. So that's where we're at academically.
Notice here on the last page, says that after each 9 weeks, students who are still learning virtually will be given the opportunity to return to school. So are we saying that if you enroll in the virtual training in the very beginning, you will not be able to come to school until those first 9 weeks are over? Or is it every 9 weeks? So what does that statement mean, I guess?
I'll be honest with you, I was personally uncomfortable with making a wholesale statement to say it's just going to be every 9 weeks that we review that, because we know some things may come up. 2 weeks in, you're coming, and then all of a sudden, you're just not comfortable with it. And sometimes people, they don't know until they experience that. And so we wanted to give them that opportunity to maybe pull back out, but we were looking logistically at what is that going to look like, because we wanted to make sure it's fair so that we didn't have students bouncing in every day, going to one system, going to back home, coming in, going back home, because from a tracking standpoint, from a campus standpoint, that is really a logistical nightmare on how that you accurately keep track of that. So that's where we wanted to be fair and say, let's maximize the learning, whether it be from distance learning or in person. So to say it's only going to be 9 weeks, I don't think that that's fair to say that yet, but it is up for discussion as to say what would be an adequate amount of time to say for folks, hey, give it this period of time and then let's review. We were definitely uncomfortable as a staff to say 18 weeks or to say once you go on, you can't, because there's too many things that come up. So we wanted to be fair with that, and that's kind of where we were the last re-entry task force meeting that we had talked about that.
And I can understand the reasoning behind it. I mean, just logistically and staffing and everything behind it would be crazy just coming in and out. I just want to make sure that the parents know that that is what is being considered.
Yes.
I think that you put that out up front, but I think there could be, with this number of students and this number of staff, there could be something that changes in the middle of that. Like you might take some things on an individual basis. We're just looking at wholesale numbers. I don't think we can put a hard and fast line and say everybody can do it. There may be some.
So is the individual principals going to make those individual changes as they come up? I mean, or is it a committee?
We'll be in coordination with that. I don't want them to have to shoulder any of that at any point in time with this. That's not, I'll help to shoulder that, whatever we need to do to be a part of that process. I don't want them to feel like that they're on an island. If they have a recommendation, I think it needs to be in tandem so that that parent doesn't feel like, well, wait a minute, we weren't even heard. I want parents to know that they have a voice and are being heard with it, because like Mr. Christie said, each situation is going to be unique, and we want to be able to address that.
Thanks.
Right, going back to the plan that principals need to submit by July 15th, which I'm assuming is this Wednesday. I'm assuming that this is a plan that you guys are going to go over. You just kind of want to see where they are right now, because there's an awful lot of questions out there that haven't been answered as of yet, and I hate for people to think that they're going to submit a plan right now and we're going to do that 2 months from now, because I still think there's a lot of people that haven't been heard as of yet that need to be heard. And, I just, this is the strangest situation. I'm not, not criticizing, saying anybody's wrong, because I don't know that anybody can be wrong. I don't know anybody can be right in this situation. What I think the most important thing is that everybody in our district is heard from, and everybody in our district realizes this is the way we're going to start, and they're on board with that, and they know what the next plan is if the first plan doesn't work. And that's the only way we can get it together. The chaos of infection doesn't bother me near as much as the chaos that may happen within the staff. If people start saying, well, I told them not to do this, they wouldn't listen to me or whatever. And I just want to make sure that everybody's voice gets heard. And it's not one of these things where a principal stands up in the front and says, guys, this way we're doing school, you're going to watch this door, you're going to watch this. It's not, this is not your normal opening of school. And like I said, I don't think there's a right way, and the wrong way, who knows? And we've given a lot of guidelines, but the important thing is we better make sure that we have buy-in from as many people as we possibly can. Teachers need to know about this a long time in advance and have an opportunity to be able to express. Parents need to be able to express. I don't know how these other guys, but I get stuff all the time about people that ask me about different things. I try to advise them back to the people that would know those answers. But, even parents need to know there's not a right way. And I mean, based on everything I see out there, we put 5,000 people together, you're going to have a case. I mean, I think we've got to be ready for that, and we've got to expect that. But what I don't want to happen is staff go on a run. I think, well, we put this plan together where nobody was going to get sick. And we can't keep people from getting sick at any time. Kids get cold, kids get the flu, I mean, that's just things that happen. But I think, it's going to be very, very important that each school talks to all their people within their school. And I've done the same thing, somebody else mentioned that too. I've advised them to talk back to their principals. I mean, that should be their first, their site-based members, their KEA members. That people are going to have to communicate with everybody, and everybody's going to know this is what we're going to start out doing.
And that's where we're headed with this with the principals. They're working on building plans, and we're going to look at it, we're going to meet with the principals, we're going to the schools, we're going to go through it with the principals. The principals are going to go with us to other buildings and see what's going on in the other buildings. We're inviting staff to go with us to other buildings.
I guess from
we
your
know we're not
standpoint,
going to solve it all on this first trip.
right, what I'm asking from there,
Expose
how many teachers in everybody's building know that their principal is going to submit a reentry plan on Wednesday? That's what I'm saying. When you're a teacher out there and your voice has not been heard, and you hear, well, they submitted a reentry plan. Nobody even talked to me. I don't know what's going on. I mean, you have got to talk to principals. Principals have got to talk to teachers. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not, criticizing on this, but I'm just saying everybody has to get in there, and that's people out here. There's obviously some people that are very paranoid about things, and maybe justifiably so. I don't know. But those people have to know that concern is being looked after, and this is what we think. And that may be, this is what we got from the health department. This is why we don't think you need to be concerned about this. Or this is what we got from KDE. This is why we think. But if they just see there's a reentry plan, and they say, I haven't been talked to, now I don't know anything about this.
And that's why we're doing the questions frequently asked.
Right.
We're taking those from parents and staff and anybody, and I know they're coming in from staff and parents. And we're answering those, we're going to break them out that way, so parents are looking at parental questions and staff looking at staff. We just didn't have enough of them the first time.
Right. And I know it's a process. I just want to make sure that everybody gets a chance. And most time when you do things in school, you don't ask everybody. There's always you got to do, but I think we're at a time right now where we've got to ask. And that doesn't mean that we cut something out because somebody wants it, but that person needs an explanation.
Any questions for any of the other group? Your special population statistics?
On the website, there's I was trying to find, I read it just a few minutes ago. Let's put the glasses back on. But it says if a student refuses to wear a mask, they will be put in the virtual training program.
That's going to have to be a conversation.
Is that going to be, okay.
Because that's going to endanger other students, and that's going to be a problem. So yes, we will have to have a conversation with that student and their parents.
But the packet that you sent out said, if they're in the classroom and they're within, 6 feet, they don't necessarily have to wear a mask.
Right.
But, okay, just want to be clear.
And they are supposed to wear one.
And they refuse to, they're going to be put in virtual training. Okay.
And that'll be worked out through the principal and the parents.
Is that something that needs to be added to the dress code?
Well, that's a question. We thought yes, but then when you have KDE telling you you cannot make wearing a mask a disciplinary issue. And if you put it in a dress code that says you must wear a mask, just like you put in there that you can't wear shirts with inappropriate language, if the student comes with a shirt with inappropriate language, they either have to turn the shirt out, inside out, they get another shirt, we give them one, or they go home. That's a disciplinary action. And we would have to handle it as part of the dress code, we didn't handle it the same
Well, to
way.
me, you're gonna have to have something, because what's gonna keep them from wearing
It's going-
stuff on their masks that are not allowed in the buildings?
And we have not done the dress codes for that purpose. We're still getting some information on how, whether we need to put it in the dress code, or is that something that we just address as part of the return to school plan and say, you know, it has to be, you can't have inappropriate things on the mask, you must wear a mask, and they can't have inappropriate things on.
Yeah, you would have to, because what would keep me from wearing, I don't like Gordy Peridot all over my mask, and Gordy coming there with, I mean, what keeps that from,
But
If
we-
it's just
we have-
opened
we
up.
have held the dress code up until we get some
Huh.
more clear direction.
I didn't say anything, but I will.
Gordy.
Hopefully this would be a temporary policy, right? I mean, you're looking at hopefully 6 to 12 months before all
Well,
this
I mean, I don't
be
know if you
addressed.
could put
So
it-
I don't know if we really need to put in a dress code if we don't need to, it's just, because we're gonna be taking, hopefully be taking it back out.
you can always take it back out, but you would have to have
Well, I
something.
think, I think you gotta go, that again's your communication with your parents. I mean, we're all in this thing together. If they want their kids to go back to school, these are the guidelines that are being put on us to come back into school. And, you know, there's a certain expectation. Parents always have a certain expectation when they send their kids to school about certain things. Right now, a mask is a certain expectation that you're gonna have to have. That has to be communicated with parents and why we think this is, and, you know, I guess,
If
you
you
know,
look
we can't.
on our website, that is a very specific question about wearing the mask and what happens if you refuse to wear the mask. That's out there, that's one of the first things we put out, and we'll continue to put that out.
Yeah, I mean, and you know as a principal, Gordy, you'll have somebody come to
Well,
school.
again, you know, that's what I'm saying, well, this is the reason why we are wearing a mask, okay? Studies have shown this, CDC has said this, the governor said this, you know, Department of Education has said this. I think all those things you need to go back in there, and it just wasn't, the principal said you gotta wear a mask.
Yeah.
There's a reason why you gotta wear a mask. Remember, we've been out of school for 6 months. This is how we go back to school. So we've got to be able to communicate that, and parents need to know, and parents, you know, they should be checking temperatures themselves and doing things along those lines. I know everybody doesn't have a thermometer, but, you know, I'd like to think that most people that have kids have a thermometer somewhere. But, you know, that's something that parents need to do, and they need to take on that responsibility. If their child has a fever, don't send them to school. It'll definitely save them a lot of headaches if they do that first. But I think we have to up some expectations and expect everybody to jump in here and help out.
Well, I don't have one. Anybody else have anything they want to know?
If I could just share like the special population specifically to those with student
Yeah, but
disabilities.
you're going to speak up because we can't hear this thing's
Okay,
loud.
sorry. What I was just going to share is like in reference to special populations, there's still guidance that has not been released. So in thinking about right now, it's been announced that, that with student disabilities, we anticipate a guidance document next week. But some of the other special populations, such as your EL, or English language learners, you know, there are things that haven't been released, so we're still getting information. But I would like for everyone to really be mindful that all discussions that have taken place, regardless of the area, has been including Ms. Barney, has been including our local health department, and that is the one thing, if you've ever listened to a single one of those superintendent webcasts, it keeps going back, are you consulting with your local health department? And that has been in fact a case. So, do we have the answers to everything? Maybe not, but we sure are working to get that information and include the voices that need to be a part of that decision making in those conversations.
Ms. Farming, I know you're back there. Do you have anything you want to add? I know you're,
No, like Bridget said, I mean, I consider it like privilege to be part of the task force. You know, there's some counties that haven't involved their health coordinator as part of the conversation. And I will say the top priority of this task force as a team is to keep our children safe. mean, I am gonna be sending my 3 children into these schools, and I know for a fact that, you know, these decisions are being made to keep my children safe as well. So, I mean, I have full confidence in this team.
And I would second that too, as a mother of a high school athlete.
And I'm sure it's implied, but to keep the students and our staff, you know, our teachers and everyone else in the building, to keep them all safe. And it's going to be a tricky challenge, and I think there's going to be a lot we're going to still learn in the next 6 weeks, that people are going to have to be flexible, and, you know, we make a decision right now, we might learn something new 3 weeks from now and say, nope, there's a better way to do it. And hopefully people will not get bent out of shape and just know that this is a fluid process, and we're all going to try to do the best that we can.
There's another web test tomorrow at 2 o'clock. It can change tomorrow.
Which I think it will, as numbers are rising.
But at the same time, I think we know that, well, I feel that the most in-person learning we can accomplish this year is going to be the best for our students from an academic standpoint and from a social and development standpoint. So that'll be the goal, but still, we know we have all these challenges to have to deal with and balance that out.
We've got to address here by Thursday, we've got band camp scheduled. That's something we've got to, there is no guidance for band yet. We've got band camp scheduled, and as of today, there is no guidance for band. It's not part of KSHAA, so there is no guidance, so we're, and it's scheduled for next week. So we're working on that, it'll be the next 2 days.
Is there any expectation that they will provide guidance, or is that going to be left up to the local
I think
community?
the guidance they would provide right now will be very similar to what we see with the athletics. Minimum of 10 to a group. There, you're talking about band where they're actually blowing on instruments, and, you know, obviously math's not going to be a part of that. So, now, I will say that we are working with them, they are, and working with the principal and the group there, that's high school, to do the band camp. They are looking at ways that they can do it, and do it much like their athletics, so we're not there yet. So that's something we'll have to look at. That's the first big thing that's coming up right now. We're gonna have to deal with it.
All right, well, if that's what we're looking at, well, are we ready to move on to number 3? I think I want to leave this on for next week too as well. I think it will help, and if you all are good with that, and any updates you all have.
We'll have more questions on the website answered. I don't know how much new information we'll have before next week tonight, but we'll, if you want.
Well, I think just a general update of what you all are doing and what's coming in front of, that would help, just so we're in the know. Okay, item number 3, review and discuss results of survey questions from the parents. Christy Bush, Paul Christie. No, I'll put my mask on since you're coming in now.
On July the 1st, the task force here at the district office got together to make a parent survey. The next day, July the 2nd, all the principals came in with the task force, and we looked over those questions that we had made the day before and tweaked some to see if it would be appropriate, and everybody was in agreement. So on that evening, we sent out the survey. That was the 2nd. It was due on July the 8th at midnight. On Thursday and Friday, we met back together and looked at all the data that we had gotten so far. At that particular point, there were 5,186 enrollment students projected during that window. 3,326 took the survey. Now that's individual students, because a parent could have multiple students. Plan A was, are you prepared to come back to school full-time on September the 8th? If you answered yes to Plan A, you went to a question that had to do with transportation. Do you need public school transportation? 1,114 said yes. If you answered Plan B, which is you want digital learning, that was 1,212. That prompted you to a question that Becky Lowry needed answered, is do you need lunch? Because they will have provided a drive-through type situation for them to pick up lunch through Becky's department. There was also a question that said, do you need help with masks? There were 333 responses that said yes. So the 4-H and Extension Office homemakers are wanting to make those also available. That's why we wanted a number for what they can make. Now, in that whole system of that survey, there were 274 duplicates. So that means if a parent were a divorced family, if they accidentally thought they submitted it and they didn't, they did it twice. So we deducted all of the 274 duplicates to what you all have uploaded. So roughly there were 1,860 students missing from the survey at that point. The next day, the principals were told and given all the data and were asked to call every single person with the survey versus their enrollment on IC and look and match the students that were not called or did not do a survey. So every school is supposed to get in contact with every single guardian of the parent that we don't have a survey for. What you have in front of you is the first survey that we took that was completed on July 8th. You'll see district, needs a mask, students at each school, the choices they've made between option A and B, and then of course we're waiting on the other 1,860 students throughout the district. Now this does not include preschool. Preschool is going to do something different. Can I answer any questions from the past? What led us up to the survey you have in front of you?
What's your expectation on when these principals will get a hold of the other two?
Our expectation was a week, unless for some reason they just can't get a hold of someone.
I guess that leads into my second question there, is that do we have any idea on how many people we may not get a hold of? Because obviously, you know, one of the biggest concerns we have about students not being in school is that it's probably the safest place that a kid can be is school. I saw a news report, I think it was out of Los Angeles, and they were talking about how many hundreds of thousands of students that they could not locate anymore because of being out of school for so long. I just wonder if that translates into hundreds of students in our district. And I think there's a lot of people who don't realize what some students go through when they're not at school.
I agree with you.
And I'm really concerned about, you know, how to get a hold of them, if they're still here, where they are, what's the situation. I'd be kind of interested to hear how many people, probably more, how many people we don't get in touch with.
I think once we start to get the information back from the principals on those that didn't do the original, then we start to narrow that down, how many we're really looking for at that point.
With our social and emotional group, we can have the counselors, the family resource, even the nurses help contact. Some principals are doing the whole staff, dividing it up. They may have relationships with those families already. I know one principal today said he was going to do a messenger and say, if you have not heard from GRC within the week, please know that we're trying to get hold of you. Please call school, because we've got to know where everybody is and what their plans are. We would be glad to give you an update when the week is over, if that's okay with you, Mr. Christie, and let you know.
I think it should be just included in that school update that Ms. Ritchie talked about having all the time. Just, you know, we've been out of contact with this many students, and, you know, maybe it can be a community-wide thing, you know, contact your school or something. I mean, you know, just something we can do just to make sure that we can locate these students.
A radio show on Wednesday morning. And that's one of the things I found addressing there is that the survey was sent to our parents out there that may hear this and has not completed the survey. We're going to have to get back to the principal at their school and start trying to put it out. The schools I'll start doing some social media stuff once they go through and they figure out how many they can't get a hold of, and they'll start doing some social media stuff, trying to bring in some more.
They can probably post it on their marquees as well, take the survey. If you have some, I don't know, what to put on something quick or something to do that.
Did you also get your updated calendar you wanted the teacher work days on? It's uploaded for you as well. And as of 7/10, our enrollment is 5,217. So we went up just from our survey days of 5,186.
One of the things that this did, it helped us a lot with our transportation concerns. We're looking at numbers, we got a more solid number now. At this point, I do not feel like that social distancing and some of those things on the buses are going to be as big of a concern as we thought they would have been had we been transporting as many students. I think a lot of the students are going to be dropping their parents and some things, which is going to make things probably a little better for us in transportation. It's not going to lessen the route, we're going to run every route, but it's going to put probably a fewer number on buses, which is going to make it more doable.
What's the normal breakdown in a normal year of the transportation?
We're over 50%.
So the results we have, I know it's, out of almost 2,000 people, that really didn't change. I mean, it's going from 47, 53%.
Except normally we would be transporting about 2,500 to 3,000, but right now we're at 1,100. But that number, I expect that number of transportation will go up as we reach and make more contact with these parents that have not completed the survey. And I'm sure it's probably about that same percentage of those who haven't responded will expect it to carry through, so numbers of transportation could go up a little bit.
It's when I was talking to one parent on the phone because she was trying to teeter between A and B, I could hear the children in the background. I would guess they were 8th or 9th grade. They wanted to be back in school. They want to
I
come.
bet.
One of the things to note here that's going to hurt us a little bit is in the food services. When of all the students, you've got 30% of them now saying that they don't plan on taking part in the meal plan in any way, whether it be at school or at home. Those that are not coming back, those that aren't, that are going to be online, only 70% of them are interested in taking part in the meal plan. So we're losing some meals here.
That could change.
That could pick up, once, and those meals be served at each school site. So wherever they would normally have been in school, that's where they would pick up the meal. There's already a plan in place on how it's going to work.
I was a no on that, and my kids have already fussed at me. So I can change.
You can change it.
I can change.
Is there anything else that I can answer or help in any way?
Sorry, Becky, I'll change. There's
Thank
4.
Every mouth counts.
That's right. Okay. Item number 4. Review and discuss results of survey of teachers. That was all.
We did send out the survey to all staff that being certified, classified, food service, bus, transportation, everybody in the district. At this time, when you look and go back about 3 pages, you'll see we had 702. We did the same thing with the staff that we did with the students. The next day, after the survey ended, we identified the staff that had not responded in the survey. The principals are contacting each of those individual teachers. So when we get through this, we'll have 100% accounting of the teachers that are employed by us for this year. And at the time of the 702, I think we only had 2. We had a certified and a classified. And today I had an email shared with me from another person that raised some concerns, but was planning on coming back. But if there was an option to work from home, they would like to be considered for that. So we're at 3 right now. That's the surveys that we're getting back. Now, there are still about 100 or so out there. Now, that number of 3 could grow from that number. And that may be why some of those are hesitant about sending that in. But we're down to 100, maybe a little less. And we're contacting each of those individuals.
Well, I'm glad that you're making an attempt to get a hold of all the teachers. That's probably the most feedback that I've got is that teachers, I think, kind of were a little bit dismayed in the survey in the sense that they weren't allowed to make any comments or suggestions or anything on here. Did hear from some teachers that said, you know, there was a little bit of a fear factor if they're asking us if we're going to come back to school or if I'm a non-tenured teacher, and I say, no, I'm not planning on coming back. Is that going to affect me? And you know, it's easy for us to just sit here and say, no, that's not, that it didn't even come into question, but you've got to understand there's fears out there that people need to make sure get answered.
And we did ask a follow-up question to that. Do you or anyone in your immediate household have an existing condition that would prevent you?
And I guess that bothered me a little bit there too, because there's a little bit of difference between if you plan to work 99.4 coming back, and then it says that there's somebody in there that keeps you from coming back at only at 95%, and that seems like that would be more than 2 people that you talked about right there. So I think that probably needs to, you know, a teacher survey probably needs to be an ongoing type of thing, some follow-ups, and make sure they know that that website is open, and maybe there needs to be a separate just for teachers questions and comments that somebody can go through and make sure. I just think it's important that the people that we have out there have got to be comfortable. They really are. This is going to be hard enough anyway, and we don't need to alienate anybody, and we need to hear from as many people as possible. Obviously, we've got to make a decision, but we still need to hear from people and see what their fears are.
I don't know if you all had a chance to read, but about 5:30 this afternoon, we got copied on an email that had a lot of details of teacher and staff concern. And there's a lot of concern out there. So if you all hadn't had a chance to read it,
It's pretty, I mean, you know, in my opinion, there's probably some that are extreme, but I'm not sitting in that person's seat. You know what I mean? That's the thing about this, is it's just, you know, it would be hard for me to comfort somebody in that, but somebody has to comfort somebody in that. There are some things that I mean, face it, nobody in this room knows. We just don't know. And we've got to address those fears.
One of the things that we know is the number of students that aren't going to be coming back into the building. We know there's going to need to be teachers that do online work. So there's an opportunity to put some people at ease, some people trying to put them in positions where they may or may not even be working from inside the building. They may be doing the online thing from an off-site, or if they are in the building, they're in a classroom that's empty, void of students, void of other people, which could ease some fears there. So that's where we're starting to we're drilling into this. That's where we're starting to get to now. Is trying to find out where those are and what numbers of teachers we're going to need in classrooms, how that's going to work. And in the next week or so, that's why we're going to be in the building.
But again, that's where I would still follow your chain of command, because you know your principal better than anybody.
The principals have got to talk to these teachers and got to find out from the teachers if they're uncomfortable what it is. And then before us to work with the principals, if there's something we can do from here to ease that. That's why we're going to build. We want to see where we can be an assistance to help the principals in areas that they think they might need help, or where there's concerns. And you're going to hear about one of those we talked about later tonight, where one of our concerns are.
So when they email me, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what I can do with them or to help them. I mean, but you've never worked with me, so you're better start with your principal. Tell them.
Right.
Then they can.
I think, you know, that all comes back to communication. Who do I talk to?
Right.
Who do I need to talk to this? Because, you know, when a teacher emails us, I'm like, we missed the boat here, because I'm not in the building. I'm not seeing what they're seeing. That's why there has to be some sort of communication chain that all of that stuff can go through. And I just think, you know, as time gets closer, I think you're going to get more parents that are going to be concerned. I think a lot of parents right now are thinking, how do I get my kids out of school?
Right.
And then when it gets closer, I think they'll start reading more information. And you know, if you read the information out there right now, the chances of a student catching it from a teacher is much greater than a teacher getting it from a student, because teachers are more in an age group where it's more prevalent at. But you know, nobody knows that rate of infection, how it's going to happen when it gets within the school system, because we've been out of school all the time and we don't know what's going to happen. So I think parents are going to have to be in on a lot of things, and they need to be assured on many, many things as much as possible.
As we get closer and we continue, all this group, we work with the principals, get these plans worked out in the buildings, we go through them to identify the problem areas. They will start to have their open houses, and they start to bring parents in small groups back into school, and they're going to go through the process and talk to them about this is what the day's going to look like, this is where you'll have to wear masks, this is where you likely won't. When the child goes to lunch, this is where they're going to eat. They won't have to wear a mask during lunch. They might eat in the cafeteria, they might eat in the gym behind the bleachers, they'll be paid to set up there. There's a plan, with all the buildings are planning to bring groups of parents and students back in for open houses in small numbers. That's why we front-loaded all those teacher work days, those things up in advance, so that we've got some time for the teachers to work in the buildings and to work with bringing parents in to put them more at ease. And I know there's going to be a lot of questions. We get more questions each day. And it seems like the more information you put out, the more questions that generate, the more detailed questions get. Now, I thought 7 years ago when this district went through, we closed 5 elementary schools and 2 middle schools. It was the most difficult thing. That doesn't hold a candle to what we're looking at right now. That doesn't hold a candle to the things that we're dealing with on a daily basis right now.
Well, that,
Fear
you
factor that's involved in this.
put the information out, and then you look at the next day and they tell you, no, that information just changed, start over.
And that's frustrating because then the parents feel like we're chipping them, we're not giving good information. So we're trying to be careful and deliberate about the timelines that we put things out to make sure that we've got the most accurate information we can before we put it out, because it's one thing to put it out there, you put it on the website, this is what's going to happen, and then a week from now, you get something totally different. Now we got to go back, we got to change it, correct.
Anybody else have any questions on item number 4? Okay. Item number 5, discuss and consider approval of additional sick days due to COVID-19 related absences in accordance with the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. Scarlett Ryan, it's been so long since we've seen you.
Been behind the scenes. But trust me, I'm talking to lots of people every day. And you talk about encouraging and reassuring, that's all I do every single day. And they do know who to call when they have a question about staffing or about someone that's going to be an advocate for both the district and for the employee, because I've been on both sides. I've been having a lot of conversations with Brian, very good conversations, with my other Brian over here, very good conversations, with Wayne Young, who I trust a lot at KASA, and he's taught me off the ledge a couple of times because I'm trying to interpret this guy. Did you guys take a chance to look at it? Mm-hmm. It's very cut and dried if you really read it and dig it out. There's only 6 categories where you can qualify for the COVID emergency days, and there are only 10 days offered. And if you read that, if you have qualifying event number 1 through 3, you would get up to 80 hours of paid time off. And that's just 2 weeks. And that would let up to 2 weekends, which would give you the 14 days quarantine you would need if you had to do that. But if you look at the reasons, they have to be documented. And reason 1, 2, and 3 have to do with you're ordered to be quarantined by an entity. Number 2, you've been advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine. Or number 3, you're experiencing symptoms and you're awaiting a diagnosis. That's the only 3 reasons that you even qualify for the 80 hours. If you get number 4, where you're caring for a family member, you get 2/3 of the amount of your daily rate for up to 10 days. And the 12 weeks of extended leave is only for number 5, which has to do with your lack of childcare because a school is closed or daycare is closed, and you can in writing, you say that you cannot find suitable childcare. That extends your pay up to 12 weeks, the first 2 being the 10 paid days, and then it can extend up to 12 weeks, that it's paid at 2/3 your rate of pay.
Scarlett, don't interrupt you right here, just want to ask you a question.
I might have hit on it today in a second.
Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. Go ahead, go.
So,
And I'll get
the
you.
questions that Brian and I talked about, and I didn't always know the answer, so I would like hang up the phone, I call Wayne, and I'm like, Wayne, what happens if a person ends up on a ventilator and they're off for 6-8 weeks? Bottom line, we go through just the same process we would go through if a person had an illness like cancer, open heart surgery. They would request FMLA, and with FMLA, their pay runs concurrently with their sick leave bank. So they would get the 10 days that's paid by us, but then their sick leave would have to kick in if they end up on a long-term illness, and they would go get 12 weeks of FMLA. That only protects their position, and it protects their benefits. It would allow them, if they ran out of sick leave and they weren't getting paid, they can bring in the checks to cover their benefits, just like any other person that takes a leave of absence for a medical reason. The other medical leave, of course, that could be taken if the person puts in writing, I'd like to take extended medical leave, has a doctor's note for why they want to take it, but it's unpaid once their sick leave runs out. And they would not, I think somebody asked the question, if they had to be on the leave, would they lose tenure, or would they not get their tenure year, and all those kind of questions. They would have their job the next year if they went on a medical leave. That's what a medical leave is, if they request that. They would hold their job depending on how long they have to be off. Of course, everything's going to be a case-by-case basis. We sit down together, talk what's going on. But my job tonight was just to tell you legally that we have to do this. This is what we have to do, but this is all we have to do. We don't have to do more. We can do more if the board chooses to do more. But this is what we have to do right now. Their sick leave, they have to use it. If it's anything other than 1, 2, 3, and 4, 80 hours. If it goes to 5, it can extend up to 12 weeks. If they get ill with the COVID, they can apply for FMLA, and they have to use their sick leave, and it runs concurrently with their FMLA. Keeping in mind, this ends 12/31/2020, and at that time, we have to see what the powers that be do. Do they extend it? Do they add to it? Do they see what problems we have? We just have to wait and see. I have this document that I like a lot. Brian looked it over. It was I stole it from another district, Oldham County. Their board attorney had done it, and it basically is very good. And I'd be glad to send it to you guys if you'd like to have it. But you have to really read it over and over. You have to know this first, and then read this, and you'll understand what this is talking about. But it tells us our obligations as far as pay and in the different situations. We just came off the blue. That's where we were paying it. Nobody was docked any pay. We paid everybody through the end of the school year. And we're still doing that pretty much. But it's starting to talk about the emergency pay leave, which is the 80 hours I told you about, and then it goes on to talk about the Expansion Act. Just remember, the Expansion Act is only for scenario number 5. So, now what?
Well, first off, I guess if I looked this over, I wasn't real sure, but it almost seems like to me that we need to add to policy.
I've been hearing about that. KSBA is encouraging us not to add to policy because they don't know what's going to happen yet. And I even saw on the finance map a lot of information today. It's going back and forth, what's your district doing, what's your district, and nobody's doing the policy yet. But, KSBA does our policy.
I was just looking, they have a sheet for the sick leave, that you fill out for that.
I've got one, I made
I'm
one.
saying if that's a procedure, at least maybe we need to adopt a procedure for that, I'm not sure.
We will, I've got a sheet, and I talk, my go-to people, I don't stand up here and tell you I figure this all out by myself. I go to Madison, Scott, Woodford, I don't mean to Fayette much, they're different bunch, but I go to those guys every decision that we make them, we all get together, we share forms, we talk about it, I call them, they call me, and we'll get a form that'll be procedure, and it's pretty simple. It even has the check box, the one I made has the check boxes for the 6 items.
Right.
Where you
So this
fall,
is-
yeah,
It has, like, somebody has to sign on.
yes, I'm on it, I'm on it.
Okay.
And then there's also a form to request the expansion,
Right.
so I am on it.
I guess the other thing, and maybe on this, that I have from KSBA about if you have to sit out for childcare, according to what I read here, is that your first 2 weeks are unpaid.
You can have it unpaid if you want to, and I'm thinking, when I've thought about that, I think the reasoning is, with FMLA, you're allowed to save 10 sick leave days if you want to. So my thinking on that is that's the 10 days, you don't have to use your first 10 days of sick leave. If you want to save them, you can bank those sick leave days and then start using your sick leave 10 days in.
Well, I mean, just the way it read, it's that, it says the first 2 weeks are unpaid, but the employee may elect to substitute accrued personal leave, vacation leave, sick leave under board policy.
And if this form that I have, where if it goes to number 5, basically what it's giving you is 10 weeks of paid FMLA, first 10 days may be unpaid, maybe. Or employee may use other types of paid leave, meaning their emergency leave, their personal leave.
It'll come out
or-
right. These days that we have to provide for this are not carryover days.
No.
But the 10 days that you had,
These,
those are days you're not gonna
these
get
come out of
carried over.
our pocket. If they're
Right.
number 5,
Right.
and it's at 2/3 their rate of pay.
if we estimated any kind of cost that could be, and then Mr. Christie, what is our point where we say we gotta shut school down because we can't afford to do this anymore? I mean, I'm assuming that's what.
It's very difficult to know.
Do this part first.
Yeah.
Determine what the cost is.
Right.
We gotta figure out, first of all, if you're, you were speaking of the survey and that it put pressure on people and all that, and I think if you sit on the task force and we fretted and fretted about all that,
Right.
and we really are hoping for strong relationships between principals and employees, that they feel free to talk to their principal, I would hope. I know there are certain principals that I've talked to that have very close relationships with their people, and their people tell them how they feel.
Well, this is one thing too, that I mean, even if we don't do a policy, there needs to be something in every building exactly what this does. Because the way I read this, say a teacher starts in September, say the teacher is pregnant, say they have a child that they need to stay home for.
They'll do it if
Okay,
they do it.
wait now, I'm on to you, let me finish.
Okay.
Okay, so, all right, so they have a child they have to stay home for, they're gonna take their 12 weeks.
They don't,
Right.
you really
Okay,
don't
wait
get
just a minute here
6.
now, they're gonna take the 12 weeks here, okay?
Okay. They're gonna have a doctor tell them they need 12.
Right, okay, but they've got a child that they're staying home for, okay?
Policy calls for 6.
And then we get across to the next semester when they have this baby, and there's no unpaid leave left, because you only get 12 weeks, correct? You don't not get additional 12 weeks, it does not.
What do you, for maternity, is that what you're talking about?
But just do your family leave, I mean.
The family leave is a maximum of 12 weeks, but really for maternity, it's a 6 weeks leave. Now, if the doctor tells you you need 8 or you need 12, they can take them. We do that all the time, and we have many employees that run into a no-pay status.
Right.
But the good news is, 90% of my pregnancies have, not mine, but they have a disability policy through American Fidelity that pays them while they're off, and everybody's doing that now.
Can you do that for the COVID?
You can do a disability policy with American Fidelity, and we're gonna have open enrollment coming up in the fall. And people that we're hiring right now, and American Fidelity's contacting them, and I'm hoping they're getting them disability policies. I
So
think it's
that's
a great
an option,
idea.
yeah.
It's not gonna pay 100%, but it pays something like 2/3 of what they would get. And you can even take that money in conjunction, and your sick leave at the same time. So a lot of the maternity cases will take 8 weeks off, it's C-section or whatever, and they may have sick leave or may not. But if they don't, that disability kicks in, or if they have the sick leave, they take the disability and the sick leave.
Mr. Harrell, if I think what you were getting at was if someone, say, was off and used up their FMLA for pregnancy and then came in and something happened, that time been used and there is no more FMLA.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
then
why
they would-
I think people just need to understand that, you know, you're given an additional 10 sick days, okay? But you're not given any more emergency leave. And they need to understand in case, you know, they take it this semester, the next semester, if something comes up, then I just use pregnancy, but it could be
It's very
anything else or
common.
whatever like that. They don't have that family leave.
The only option I would have, and I do look for something to change, January 1, I really feel like it'll change, but the only option they would have is to request unpaid medical leave. And who knows where we're gonna be at that time, how many people are gonna be, if we're still open, or. I tell you, I'm talking to people every day, people don't know the answers to these questions.
Oh, I agree, and I mean, that's what, you know, I wanted to ask about the policy, because I have a hard time believing if we don't put it in policy that it's,
If they don't have the, you treat it just like any other illness, so if they've already had their FMLA, we have to sit down and look at that situation and say, let them sit down and figure out what they're gonna do.
I hope one of these organizations, KSBA, KEA,
Comes
somebody
up with
puts out
something.
there and says, and something you can post in schools so people know exactly what they can do if they qualify for the leave or.
We're still meeting, we meet probably 3 times a week with anticipated time on, like, childbirth. And from what I'm hearing, and I think I'm a pretty approachable person, they're fine. I mean, they're coming to me to sit down and talk about their time off and how we're gonna do it, and they're planning on it, you know? So I think I can't answer every question. I can certainly try. But if you all, I would encourage you all to listen to some of the superintendent's webcasts, go back and listen to them, and just, maybe you'll get a little better understanding for the depth of this. Because we're not just sitting here. We know it's big. It's big.
Ms. Wright, can I ask a couple questions now?
Please do.
In the middle of this, it says that this applies to, what is it, private sector with fewer than 500. So, A, we're not private.
We're the public sector.
And we don't have fewer
We're
than
in the
500.
public sector.
So yeah, that's the next point, it says certain public, so I'm assuming you have
That's
already
us.
looked into it, and this certain public has been defined somewhere to include us.
If it makes you feel better, I'm gonna tell you where I got this. There's a guy named Todd Allen. He's a KDE attorney. So I emailed him and I asked him for the most up-to-date links, and I would be glad to send you the email he sent me. Let me just forward it to you. Want me to just forward it to you? And it's got links to, I mean, the question and answer section will rock your world, but it's got like hundreds of questions and answers, and they're really good.
I guess on that specific question, the certain public sector, you all have asked that question, and you found the answer, and it says, yeah, we definitely are in that category. So then a follow-up, I know for employers with less than 500 that are paying this out, they can then offset that from their Social Security, their 941. Do we have that ability to do that, or are we excluded because we're over 500, or do you know?
I totally do not understand the question. I'm sorry. Paul, can you help me?
Well, so those of us in the private sector, so we're filling out a quarterly tax form where, you know, we've collected Medicare and Social Security taxes from people. And then,
Will you email me your question, and I'll find out.
yeah.
I'm
happy
quite
to.
sure right now I
I think
don't know.
probably the answer is, since we're over 500, the answer is tough.
Yeah, and you know, our teachers don't do Social Security. Classified.
What was the question, that our number of employees are over 500?
Those of us that are private employers that are less than 500, if we're paying out these
Sick time.
FFCRA qualifying wages, we can offset that on our quarterly 941, and the government's paying for it. Do we have that same opportunity? That would be the answer I was afraid of, which is tough. Okay.
That's good to know.
I was gonna say, I was under the impression though that you used it.
Okay. Oh, well. I was afraid it would be tough, but I thought I would ask anyhow.
I'm not so good on those tax questions.
The one place that the question that I raised, and I'm concerned about our staff is if they, when we talked about the CDC guidelines we're operating under, and I answered those questions, staff operating under the same parameters as the students. So if a staff member comes in and has a temperature, we have to send them home. And they're only gone for 72 hours, and they come back temperature free. Then the question is, what about those 3 days, or those 2 or 3 days that they were absent? Doesn't qualify for any of this. At this point, they have to use their sick leave.
Unless they choose to have the test, and then they qualify under number 3,
Yeah.
waiting for the medical.
That's what we do is we say, hey, you know, if you go get a diagnosis, we'll pay you. They're like, pay or no pay?
Yeah.
Well, but if they test negative, still,
Then if they test negative, we'll pay
Yeah,
for
because
their days. They submit their days.
so they went and they sought the
It-
medical
It's
diagnosis.
number 3 on your chart. They're waiting for a medical diagnosis.
but if they do not go for medical diagnosis, they
Well,
come
see-
back 3 days later.
And the way
they
to
have
look at it,
Under our current plan, they have to use their sick leave.
and the way to look at it, and it's what Wayne was saying to me, you've got to look at it like this. If they don't qualify for 1, 2, or 3, or 4, they can't get the time off. So number 1 says they've been quarantined by, someone has said, federal, state, local, you have to quarantine. Well, that one wouldn't qualify for that. Nobody's told them they have to quarantine. And number 2, healthcare providers self-quarantine by healthcare, they haven't done that. And number 3, they haven't had the test, so they're not waiting on a medical diagnosis.
I guess when I get back about, I guess what bothers me a little bit about not having things in policy, and I understand about how things are changing and doing that, but, you know, currently now, you know, teachers could come into the building and they could have 104 temperature and nobody's gonna tell them to go home. So I'm just looking at your recourse with the teachers are saying there's no policy that says I have to go home. There's just a piece of paper there that says I have to go
Well, the
home.
CDC tells them they have to go.
Okay, well, I'm just saying here that they, what happens to their appeal of saying, you know, your thermometer's correct?
Well, we've got
I don't
several.
know. I mean, I'm just saying that I think when we don't put things in policy, I think that leaves us open just the same way with this, you know, with the family leave. And I know, you know, I'm not saying anybody's going to go out there and intentionally deny somebody from getting in here or whatever else, but if it's not in policy, what's your appeal process as a teacher? Saying, I don't understand why they wouldn't let me have. Is there no policy that they come back and appeal? Just somebody just said, no, you can't have it.
I think we'd have to wait and see what they tell us, and then I do think that we maybe need to put something in policy, but the more specific you get, the harder it is
Well,
to
I
enforce.
understand. I understand how that goes, but I'm worried about, you know, both sides of that issue.
If they're applying for the 80 hours, I'm gonna give them the form, let them fill it out, let whoever signs off on it. I'm not gonna fight with people. That's 80 hours, I mean, if the,
I think those, under these 6 things are pretty cut and dry. Those be easy enough answers. I go back to the one I just said, the one I'm gonna get questioned on is gonna be the teacher that comes in and says, and they come through and they've got a temperature of 100.5, and we say, you've got to go home. And they say, I've got allergies, I know I don't have COVID, I know I don't, and they go home, they stay home for 3 days, the mandated 72 hours at a time, they come back temperature free. Now I've got to face this person and say, I sent you home, but I can't pay you.
because you
You're
didn't get
sick.
tested.
Oh, you
But
didn't get tested.
there is a place, on the bypass now, Becky was telling me about it, it's, they know in 15 minutes.
There's really no,
First care, I had a chain last Thursday.
You give it 15 minutes now?
Was it in the nose or throat?
First care in the nose, and I also had the antibody test. but
It was free.
It was free.
Anybody can go.
Really, it was free?
The nose and the back of the brain.
It's not that bad.
You did it in the car?
Within 30, I was in my car, they did the nose thing, I had to wait 15 minutes for them to say that was negative before they would do the antibody test. Once that came back negative, I got to go in and get the blood test for the antibodies. Within 24 hours, I found out about the antibody test. So, you know, I found out everything within, 24 hours.
Is
But
that-
it only took 15 minutes for the negative COVID test to come back.
And I'm going to stay in contact with the people that are doing the 172 districts that are doing the same thing we're doing. Trust me, we're all in this together, and if there's a policy that gets out there with KSBA, I'm going to be on top of it and make sure we get it, and we're gonna get the best one. I do think they'll come out with something, but they are our advisor, and they don't want us to do it yet. And I think that's because things may change, but I'll be working on it. I'd like to have your copy too. I probably can get it online.
Yeah, it's in KSB, if you go under their COVID part of it, it has that in there. It looks just like.
I created a little
There,
easier
exactly
one
for
to
that.
do. It was a little bit more sparse and just a little bit easier
But,
to
you know,
do.
policy protects everybody if we can do it. And I understand what you're saying and, you know, how we're talking about it. The CDC says you can't do this. I don't know what kind of jurisdiction CDC has over us. I'm not sure.
Center for Disease Control, and it's pretty big.
Well, they're pretty big, but, you know, there's a lot
And
of
the
people
health
out there that
department.
are going against their,
And we have
what they're doing right now.
Really good relationship with the health department. They're very.
And I think it's important that we have that, but I would love to see,
We'll work on it.
of course, we got, like I said, we got a couple of months or whatever before some of this comes along, so.
That's,
Yeah, and I reiterate what Mr. Barrett says is, you know, if we have to do a policy, you know, we certainly got the time to do it.
We do.
We're probably not going anywhere, so if we need to have
And I
consecutive
don't
meetings, we could do that. It helps you all out to be more effective.
I think that there's a very strong chance that we're not gonna have to invent that wheel. I'm hoping. I really hope, because there's so
Well, they
much
have the language-
detail.
They have the language in here that could be put into policy, they just don't have it in policy form. Now, they did have this in procedure form, but, nothing in policy form.
And there's also an application for the extended, there's for the 10 days,
Yeah,
the
it has
80
both, it
hours.
has both of them.
Okay. I think on there, it said, were you all wanting to consider adding sick leave or thinking about that?
so we need to
At
take
the
a vote.
board's expense, if you wanted to do something like that. Now, I don't think anybody that I know has done that. I think the people I've talked to are sticking strictly with this at this time, doing what the Department of Labor tells us to do.
We put this on because we had to get an agenda out so many days ahead of time. And in the days while the agenda was going out, all the research is coming in, and now we see that this is pretty much a standalone thing. And maybe if you all want to do something where you grant additional emergency leave or something along those lines, that there's not really anything that you need to do.
This is FYI. The other thing is, you know, that might be something you even want to think about later on as we see how this goes down.
I'd personally like to wait at least a couple of weeks anyway, just to see. I mean, teachers be coming back in like a week before, days before work days. We want them in before work days come along.
Like the 25th of August.
You know, would like to see, Alicia, if there's some kind of cost analysis, you know,
I'm just
what,
gonna be honest, I mean, it's a crapshoot kind of budget, something like that.
but I just think, you know, at some point, Mr. Christie has to have a number and say, we can't have schooling. I mean, it just,
Here's
you
the
know.
thing about if you all grant paid leave of any kind, you're still only gonna get paid for their contract. It's just, you're not getting work out of them. So as far as the budget goes, the contract pay, sick pay, emergency pay is not gonna change the salary budget.
Right.
What it's gonna change is subs. You're gonna get more subs.
Well, you're given 10,
Well, we
you're
have
given 10
some
extra
sub-budget.
days. You know, say you get 20 days, obviously you can get.
No, you're not giving, you're not adding that to the budget. You're just not gonna get 10 work days out of that person. You're gonna give them 10 sick days.
I
That's
don't
already
read it that
budgeted.
way.
And let me explain to you about that. If someone ends up using all 10, that's us. That's gonna be us
They're
over and above.
COVID related.
They're COVID related and it's
It
approved.
does not, their sick days, if they had 10 sick days to start the year, and they had 10 COVID days, they have 10 sick days to roll over into next year.
The COVID days don't ever
No,
roll
not
over.
COVID, but they use
They're
10 for
regular 10,
COVID.
yes.
The
That
other
increases
10
the
rolls over.
liability
I
account,
think we want
not
to
the
get
budget and
Stella to
aspect
sum
of
this
budget
up
for the
before she
salary.
walks out, because everybody's
So
got
what
confused. I'm
happens
getting
is,
messages from teachers.
Those days don't roll over. And let's say that the person only has to use 3 of them for the 72 hours, then those other 7 go away. And then if this happens again to them, they have another occurrence 2 weeks later, then that 10 days starts all over again. Is that the way you understood it? That's the way I understand it.
But they get an additional 10 days?
No, yeah, if this, it's for each occurrence.
Yeah, because you gotta think it would happen more
It
than
might
once.
happen again.
I haven't looked at it far enough, but you may be right.
I did.
Okay. You were looking at this every day, I've looked at it 2 or 3 days, so.
I got-
just, I just want to make sure that our people know what they can do in this.
Yeah, of course, if it happened to me, let's say it happened to me and then it happened again to me a month later, you'd have to let me start back at, because you'd have to give me that
Because one time you might be negative and the next time you might be positive.
If you're negative,
You
you're
know?
gonna be back to work in 3 days.
Right.
Or after you go, when they give you the result, you can come back the very next day. But if you're positive, it could be the 14-day quarantine order, so then you need the 10 days again. That's my interpretation, and it's the people that I've talked to, it's kind of their interpretation. But I will send you this one, and I think you'll like it. It kind of helps you understand a little bit. I think I've got a handle on this and this.
Okay, but before you walk off, narrate that for me one more time, because teachers are already saying, I don't understand.
On this?
Yes,
Well,
just run down.
basically, the employee rights, and this one is just for, this is just for expanded 10 days of pay for very specific reasons. Do you have this?
I have it. I just want you to give a rundown for anybody that's listening right now that's like, okay, what does this mean?
The department,
Put a link on here on the website.
yeah, I wanted you to see it first, but
That's
I
good.
will.
Yeah.
If someone, what this does, basically, it does 2 things. The first thing it does, it gives 10 days of district paid sick leave if you get a COVID-related illness and you qualify under one of these 4 items. Number 6, as I understand it, is not even a vital item yet. It's for something, they put that out there in case something comes up later on that was not anticipated by the Department of Labor. So, if you have number 1, which means you're subject to federal, state, or local quarantine or isolation order related to COVID-19, and that is verified and documented, you would qualify for up to 80 hours of paid time off at 100% of your pay. Number 2, if you've been advised in writing by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine related to COVID-19, you would qualify for 80 hours of paid leave at 100% bill-footed by the district. Not their sick leave bank, we're going to give them 10 additional days. If under number 3, you're experiencing COVID symptoms and you are in the middle of seeking a medical diagnosis, so you've been for the test and you're waiting to see if you're positive or negative, you qualify for 80 hours, up to 80 hours. As soon as you find out you're negative, you can come back with documentation. If you're positive, you're going to get 10 full days, which would give you 14 days. Number 4, 1 through 3 are covered at 100% of your daily pay. Number 4, you're caring for an individual subject to an order described in 1 or self-quarantine as described in 2, and that's a loved one. You can qualify on number 4 for up to 2/3 of your daily rate of pay for 80 hours.
Question.
Do you want me to finish this for the summary?
Yeah, I want you to finish right now so that these
Okay.
people can understand.
Now, all these have to be documented. The health department, everything has to be documented. Now, that's the 80 hours. Then you move into, when you all get this and you can look at it, that's this section, the 80 hours. What qualifies? Here's your 6 reasons. Here's what we have to pay. It tells you everything. Then you move into number 5. Is caring for his or her child whose school or place of care is closed or child care provider is unavailable due to COVID-related reasons. Okay? So in that case, that's the expanded leave that you can go up to 10 weeks of paid leave. The first 10 days can be unpaid. but it's at 2/3 of your daily rate. That's the only one that the expanded leave applies to. That's the childcare situation. And keep in mind, all of this year ends December 31st. We'll see what the legislators do at that time, if they expand it, but this ends then. And if you think about it, 12 weeks from when we get started is pretty far into the semester. And we don't know how that's going to go down. Does that make sense, Ashley?
Yes, I think that
I
would
know
help.
it's
I just
hard.
wanted it to be clear because
Well,
Brad, will that clear up some things?
Well, there's some holes in that, right? Like, there's still some holes in that. Like, you could, if you were, if you were really sick, like you brought up on the ventilator, right? And you were out for 12 weeks, you could see, as a teacher or staff member, you could see a time when you're taking unpaid leave for several weeks. And that's what I'm talking about. That's the hole where, if you're asking staff to come back and interact in an environment where, the CDC says it's high risk. And it's not you that I'm saying, it's really everyone, like, if the teachers are coming back and in that high risk environment, like, they have to be covered.
This is the situation. This is all we have to do right now.
Right.
Maybe more can be done as we get into this, but right now, this is legally what we have to do. And just remember this is kind of hard for me to wrap my brain around, but I kind of have now. This FMLA process for someone sick, if they have the COVID, it's just like any other illness, according to the Department of Labor. It's like we have people all the time that have cancer treatments, they run out of sick leave. We have donated sick leave days that people use for that. We have people very often that they're very young and they don't have accumulated sick leave and they want to take 8 weeks off for baby. And they go into a no-pay status, but they're allowed to bring in their checks to pay for their health insurance and all that, but it happens all the time when people get sick if they haven't accumulated any sick leave.
But this is where they really could take advantage of
The American Fidelity
Yes.
Disability
Yeah.
Policy. There's cancer policies we have that, there's heart and cancer that I take for reasons like that, and that's why we offer the really good cafeteria plan for those things. I don't know what else to tell you. It kind of, in the saying that I hate the worst in the world, it sort of is what it is. As far as I'm concerned in HR, I will follow this to the letter until I'm told by you guys or someone else that we're going to offer more.
Well, my concern was I just wanted the staff to understand.
And they may
be
not
able
by
to-
what I said,
No, I think you've explained it really
but I
well.
think if we might could send this out to everyone.
Yeah, like Mr. Peridot said, a link or something to where they can,
Once it goes through here, it'll become a link on the.
yeah, something to where it gets out there to where, because I think there was a lot of questions about that, and I mean, I don't.
There are a lot of questions, and there are people that aren't going to ask a single question, and then you've got, I'm just going to put it out there, you'll have a group of people that'll ask 5,000 questions, and the rest of them are not worried about it.
Right, until it hits them.
Until, yeah. And then I'll be there.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, what the document we're talking about is it's a recap of a federal law.
Yes.
So
The
you're
Department
just
of
telling
Labor.
us about a federal law, obviously we're gonna follow federal
Right.
law. And there we are, and then we just had the question to cogitate on as the weeks go by, do we need to add anything on to it? And I guess one of the advantages we're gonna have by starting so daggone late is we'll be able to see what's going on in other districts. Certainly Jefferson County, Fayette County, we have a wonderful attorney, but they probably have a fleet of attorneys that are working on
Well,
this.
and school law is so specific, different from
Well, because he gives us everything.
anything. It's just different. But right now, I think we have to start with this and then watch. I will be very closely watching what everybody does. I'm on it. I'm 24/7 trying to figure it all out. But I think I've got my brain wrapped around all this. And that my hope, fingers crossed, is we're going to have very few people that get sick, I hope. And maybe this thing calms down. And then maybe before December 31st, our legislatures will come up with something to help us a little bit more. And I really wish our policymakers would step up. That's what they get paid for at KSBA. And we're not paid to write policy. We don't know how to write policy. We need that done for us, so. And trust me, I'm sure every district is bombarding them with, we want a policy. But if you listen to the webcast, I think Paul will back me up. KDE really want, they're really, you can't nail them down. They really want the district to make the district board to make the decision about how you're going to do things. They don't want to tell you what to do, but yet they give you every case scenario of what can go wrong, but then they won't exactly tell you what you need to do. But this is the closest thing I've got to an easy document to read, and I'll send this one to you all too and let you hash through it and see what you think.
Like I said, there's, last time I looked, there's 6 districts that are starting the first week of August, so we're gonna have an opportunity to learn a lot from what other people are doing.
And see what happens.
The first week of August?
Yeah.
They're thinking there's going to be another outbreak mid-year possibly, and those people have got this thinking that if we go early, we may be able to be off from Thanksgiving all the way through January when things are back. There's a thought process out there about that. Who knows if that's good? Do you know who they are?
I pulled this off the WKYT website last week, and assuming that information was accurate then and still accurate now, and they haven't changed anything, there's a lot of assumptions and caveats. It was Franklin Independent, Pulaski County, Somerset Independent, East Bernstadt, Estill County,
Forest County.
and Science Hill.
They're small.
Those are people starting the 3rd through the 6th. Well, Pulaski County is
Pretty good size.
pretty good size. Assuming they
But they're
stick
doing
with
it-
that date.
There's also all
They have-
online. They're starting early, but they're starting all online.
And that's key too.
All right.
Franklin. Oh.
So some of those that you see them starting earlier all first.
Well, my point, which is the generality, is we'll also be able to learn some from other
From those.
districts.
I think so. I mean, we hashed out a lot of things. I'm hoping that we'll be able to, at some point, Mr. Christie and I even sit down and talk, as we get requests, talk on a case-by-case basis of what's best with that principal. If it's a particular person that we can possibly figure out a way to help and work with them, we will. We'll do the best we can. Anything else?
So you don't need,
I don't really need anything. I thought at first I needed some sort of approval, and then I started realizing it's federal law.
so you just want to come and talk to us.
Well, I haven't seen you in a long time.
Okay. So anything else from Ms. Scarlett?
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you,
Very
Mr.
good.
Carter.
I
Brian.
feel for you.
How about break?
Need one more year.
Scott wants a break.
Sorry.
Scott wants a
Sorry,
break.
this year.
Scott needs a 5-minute break. All right, so we'll take a 5-minute recess. For Scott to go move his car out of my parking space.
Oh, my car, first come, first served.
He wants to get home. Yeah, Brian Thomas says it's time for us to call this meeting back to order. Oh, it is 8:23, and we are on item number 6. Discuss and consider approval of purchasing thermal temperature imaging equipment for all schools. Donald Stump and Paul Christie.
Okay.
My Donald, you've changed.
I know, I look a little
That's
different.
like, I'm sorry, man, they just totally called you Donald Stump.
It looks different with the map.
I know, right?
The mask changes everything, it does. Well, my name's Bobby Clyber, I'm with Bates Security, and I've got Brian Bates with me, he's one of our owners, so we sat down, I believe that was about a week ago, and discussed the option for what you can do with thermal temperature detection. We then went around to every single school over a 2-day period, mapped out everything. I have drawings and everything with us. To be very honest, we didn't know tonight what exactly it is you all do want to talk about. We're prepared to talk about whatever. If we need to present the product so that you all can actually see it, if you haven't seen it at all, we can do that. Or if you just want a question and answer session, we can do that also.
Short, what you see, what you
Okay.
or short demo, what you can do.
Okay. So I'll turn that over to Brian Bates. Before we do that, I'll kind of give you a small little description of what the systems do. We have it deployed in our office. And it's what a lot of people are doing for large businesses. A lot of schools are looking at doing this. There's none in the state of Kentucky, to be very honest, that I know of that have deployed it yet. But I also do know that schools all over the country right now, they're trying to come up with everything we've heard you all talk about tonight. There's what do you do? So it's, at the end of the day, what this thing is it is a true thermal detection camera that can recognize within a half a degree of accuracy. You line it up about 20 feet away. There's a couple different ways to install the device, whether you fix mount that on the ceiling or on the wall, or you put these on tripods. You set up stanchions, which are like the walkways that you're going to see in the movie theater with the pull cords on the post. You set up walkways that you kind of align how the students go through this and the staff. They walk through it. You don't have to put your teachers into it. You don't have to put any of your other staff in the line of this going up and taking hand temperatures. They literally just walk through in a straight line seamlessly. They don't have to stop for it to read. They're just going to walk through. It's a half a second read time. They'll walk through. If our recommendation will be if they get a high temperature, which if you set that at 100.4 or whatever you want to set that at, we'll have to come up with a procedure for what to do with that, but we would say move them to a secondary screening zone. So they'll go to a secondary screening zone, get back into the line, and come through a second time. Because it is possible if you're all standing outside and it's 100 degrees outside, I don't know, or even if it's 30 degrees outside. So you come in and it may not get a great read the first time. That's not going to happen very often, truthfully, but if you do get a high read, we recommend second time through. Then if you get a high read that second time, you go over, and that's when you do a CDC approved temperature reading of some sort, and then you all go with what you all are talking about, whether or not you send the student home or whatever you do from that point. Does that, and then there's also, so we've got that one, and then we've got some tablet solutions also, that our thought process on that is, so we're going to bring the mask, so I'm just going to talk about GRC since it's the largest, and I know that you all, I think I heard a number, and I'm not claiming that I know all your all's numbers that you said, but my understanding is about 1,700 students go to GRC. Maybe not all of those are going to be coming back. If the numbers are kind of what I heard, sounds like about 30% may not. But if we say somewhere around 800, 900 students are going to be coming back, and you've got 300 students coming through an entry, how long is it going to take to get those students through if you have to actually sit and measure temperatures on every single student coming through? How many of your staff members are going to be standing there taking those temperatures? How many are going to have to keep them in line to keep them social distance? So you'll still have to use all those things. What we're trying to do is put a system in place that allows you to move those students through the building quickly and get them into classrooms so you're not spending a ton of time doing nothing other than that. Beyond that, so a point that was brought up to us during our walkthroughs, which I hadn't thought about, but was a great point, was, so what do we do with our kitchen entries when we have deliveries all throughout the night and we have someone coming in there that we may have potential exposure there? So it's a really good point. And then the other thing is, what happens when a parent has to come pick their child up in the middle of the day? They're not going to walk through the vestibules and the lobbies to get a temperature screening. So how do you get their screening? And honestly, what you may do there is you just tell the parents they can't come in to the office anymore. They're just going to stand in the vestibule until the student comes. And that's a way that we can save some money. But what we have included right now is a tablet. Think about it kind of the size of your iPhone that would sit on a wall. They'll present themselves within 1 to 5 feet of that, and it'll give you a true reading of them. It can alert the receptionist there, then they can buzz the door and let them in. They'll know whether or not they have a fever or not before they let them into the building. There's some other benefits that it can do. We weren't brought in to do this, but it's just a feature that comes with it. You can do what's called, help me with the word, Brian.
Facial recognition?
No, the ban list.
Oh.
So you can do a ban list that, let's say you have a custody battle going on and dad or mom can't come to the school. You can actually put that picture inside of the unit, and when they approach, if that face is recognized, you can know and then let an SRO know that, hey, we can't let X, Y, and Z come into the building. Okay?
So this camera be on the outside of the building by the buzzer where, that's what I'm assuming, that's where it'll be mounted?
No, that's, yeah, so,
For the parents?
For the parents, it would be in the vestibule. So like when you would actually come into the vestibule, then it would be right there at the door, right before the door they get buzzed into the office, it would be there.
Okay.
No, there's nothing out there that I've seen yet that actually you can put any kind of temperature detection on the outside of the building. One question that came up in our meeting is, can we do this on the buses, which honestly, that would be awesome if there was a way to do that. We can't find anything out there that you can get an accurate reading on the outside of the building. But this is a kind of a thought, Brian, is there any way that you could pull up that other drawing? Wait, that is the drawing, okay, I see it. So inside of the vestibule, if you see that circle with a triangle, roughly there, it would be mounted somewhere around anywhere. We'll have to come up with exact mounting height, but if you can see where his cursor is, there would be that tablet would be mounted right there. So the parent would go to that, they would present their face to it, and then it would send an alert inside to the receptionist or whoever the school deems that goes to. A lot of this has to do with if this is chosen to move forward, we need to sit down and start coming up with procedures like ASAP. We've thought a lot about it, but I'm not going to tell you that we've got it all figured out quite yet. But we're more than willing to jump on to that and do everything we can.
Are you looking at just one camera per school or?
No, good question. So GRC, for example, the top main entry, you're looking at 3 up there. Down at the lower entry, you would have 1 there. At the ATC entry, there would be another one there, but there would also be a tablet at that office entry, at the ATC entry, and then you would have a tablet at the kitchen, a tablet at the reception side. I believe that's everything for GRC. The Campbell, you would have 1 at the main entry. The other entry in the back, we decided that honestly the large camera system, it's not the least expensive thing in the world. Tablets are going to be a fraction of the cost. The back entry is mainly staff entry. We thought a tablet would work fine back there because it can still alert up front. You're not going to have students coming in the back, so we didn't need to be bringing large masses of people through this. The areas that we want to use the actual big camera instead of the tablet is when you're bringing large populations through because of how quick the read time is on it. The other ones you're going to have to stop, present your face, and then move on.
So do you have a device that's in the office or that shows the temperature?
We do, yeah. So there'll be a monitor.
Watch the monitor.
Yep, so there will be a recording unit that has an analytic software running on it that will actually pull up all the temperature detection, and so it can detect whether or not you're wearing a mask. So if that's something that the school is going to put as a mandated thing, you have to wear a mask, we can set the system up that says mask is present. So basically, if I were to walk through like this, it would give a big red alert. Whoever's monitoring that station would then tell that student, put your mask on and go back through again. So what you lose when you do mask detection is you lose facial recognition. The system can do one or the other. So facial recognition would be, I know that's Bobby Kleiber. If he rushes through, I can let someone know, hey, go get Bobby Kleiber, he's in classroom, whatever. So if you want facial recognition, you can't do mask detection, but I think mask detection may be more important, truthfully, at the start anyways, for the big cameras as you go through. But yes, they would have a monitor that they're going to see all of this. We're also talking through some of the scenarios about sending email alerts to a secondary person, which I do think is important. Whether that goes to a nurse, a principal, you need to set who that person is going to be that receives that information. But that way you've got it logged that if by chance someone misses it, because you'll have monitors in the actual lobby area also that they're going to be monitoring as they walk past these. So if you kind of think about it, what you would have is no different than that camera that's set up there. You would from this side, you would have, think about it like a warming plate. It's called a black body device. It's a fixed temperature device that is set that camera is reading what this fixed temperature is. So as I walk through, it's going to, as soon as I pass it, it's going to alert on a monitor back by the camera, 97.7 degrees. If I don't have a mask, I'm doing facial recognition, it'll tell you my name and whatever information you've programmed into the system. If you're doing mask detection, it'll just tell you that my mask was on and that whatever my temperature was as I passed it. So they'll see it on that monitor, but the person on the inside at the reception desk will also have a monitor that can see all this stuff as well. And then the email alerts on top of that. But we've got to figure that piece of it out because, very honestly, we don't want to put it on the school network. So,
did you bring a demo unit with you today?
We did not bring a demo unit, but Ryan, you ready to do your presentation piece?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
So another on front base, thank you for your time. I had this put in the form of a webinar been doing a lot of webinars because of the demand for the product. So if anyone wants to see the webinar, we do the full presentation with the board's permission. I'd like to just hit some highlights if that would be helpful, which includes a demonstration. The setup that Bobby was just describing is shown here, actually deployed at IU Health. So very good example of what it would look like to bring folks in for a stanchion where there's a black body present and a screening station. Once the person comes in, they can walk at normal speed and the temperature is instantaneous. The cameras are capable of 30 reads per second. 30 people per second, just to give you an idea of the speed. And so you'll see here, this is an actual location that makes cosmetics, an actual deployment. This is just one of the shots that we wanted to share with the board because of the nice way they're bringing people in to give everyone a moment to cool down and observe proper spacing. And to also note that there are issues if you don't bring people in so that they have the ability to cool down for 1 to 5 minutes. So very good real world application notes for you there. So the drawing, if you couldn't make it out, that Bobby did visit all 12 schools, and he has a design that will allow people to be read optimally, and those are an example of the different ways to keep people organized and safely spaced. CDC guidance is single file front to back, even though that we can read left and right 10 abreast. The single file is what we're looking for. So again, typical setup, a person approaches and the screening person has the ability to see what the software may tell them. And if it does tell them, I'm going to show you what that looks like in a moment, it tells them what to do about the high temp. You can imagine someone in charge of a secondary FDA-approved screening device. If they were given an alert, they can act. We do have a system designed here to give you facial recognition and therefore the ability to go back if you do miss somebody for whatever reason that has passed through, had a high temperature, we know who they are. Move forward to that. So this is an example of what Bobby was telling you. It's about the size of an iPad on the wall, and that's what a kiosk or tablet device looks like. We've deployed these in locations that are serving retail, a different application than we are here, but very good at bringing people in much smaller numbers and cost effective. I just want to have a quick note on this. Low resolution options are available that shorten the read distance and reduce cost. However, because we're trying to read so many people all at once, and because we want as many data points as possible to give us the highest possible accuracy, we've recommended a system that's utilizing a longer read range and a black body device to sync up the temperature so we're accurate up to 0.54 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is just a simple video that we took, and then I'll show you our office. The manufacturers actually provided us this. So what you're going to notice here is a guy rubbing his head vigorously in the background, and as he comes through, you'll notice it's ignoring the hot cup of coffee, but it gets him. The moment it gets him, it's going to go ahead and pull up a notification that says, hey, high temperature, do this. So the camera has a visible lens and a thermal lens, and it gives you the ability to see who it is and what the thermal read was. At first, we weren't thinking how important this was, but what we found out is record keeping is incredibly important. We just had a client that we're aware of have a positive for COVID-19, and what became important was, did they read, did they record it, what did they do, were policies followed, and when you combined everything that they had, they were able to prove that the policies that had been followed and reduced the amount of people they had to contact, trace, and it was just a good result. So the recording goes from handwritten to automatic, to the point you can actually produce a monthly report. Some schools are considering exporting that data and providing the help of the student body over a quarter. So all of those things become available. And this is just a quick slide on what it looks like at our office. We are only about 50 people that walk in and get read on a daily basis. I was 97.5 when I walked in this morning. All clients, or all employees are required to walk in the back. And when we walk in, because we're all employees and we're all trained and not the public, we know what to do. So we walk up, you can see the camera has a visible lens and a thermal lens. a visible image and a thermal image. And when you walk through at full speed, it will read you and you move on. If you do not have your mask on, it will say, wear a mask, wear a mask. If you have a high temp, it will say high temp. We're trained to go to our isolation area and go through our secondary screening process. And we can provide you with information, best practices that we're coming across. This is a very fluid situation, but we got a lot of really good data what folks are doing right now. We also have this sending an email to HR. Stacy gets the notification. She then goes through her process to take care of that scenario. So I think that is probably everything that you would need to know at a high level. I can answer questions if anybody has questions.
So is this, the camera system really designed for indoor use only? Is that correct? Or?
Yeah, so there's some slides up here, and what it'll do is it'll talk to you about where you do not deploy. It would be don't deploy it outdoor, don't put it in direct sunlight or strong backlight, and watch out for reflective surfaces. So there's just this long list of ways to make this product effective for what it's trying to do, which is to give you an accurate screen read of the areas essentially around the eyes and forehead.
Is there reports built into this where you can get reports on, how many was scanned, what the results were, sent to administrators to see those reports?
That's exactly what a lot of folks are looking at doing, and yes. So it will give you the number of reads, the number of exceptions, which would be a high temperature, and then all of that data is up to you how you deploy or disperse it.
Like one way that I've heard for schools to use that would be a weekly newsletter that goes home, sending out that, like Brian mentioned a minute ago, this is the health of your school right now. This is how many reads we did this week. This is the percentage of X amount of high reads that we had this week. These are the second readings that we have, and this is the percentage of the health of the student body that came through these devices. So you could put something like, and I don't know if you want to do something like that, but you could absolutely do something like that through the reporting programs.
Is it capable of sending that data to like a wall board so you could have that information displayed?
I would have to think that the answer is yes. Now, I don't know how it would actually happen as far as like automation, whether or not you have to actually pull that and then send it somewhere, or if it can automatically do it. I would have to ask that question, which I'll do that and find out if it can do that automated, but I would definitely want to talk to the smarter.
And the thought process is on that is, I don't know if schools want to do this, but, the health of the school is so students and teachers walk in, they can see, hey, we're at 99.9% fever-free, or whatever data you want to put up there, give some comfort to the staff and students.
Kind of like what you see on a safety thing for, warehouse or a manufacturing facility. Yeah, X amount of days since the last accident.
I thought this screen was a good one to just give you an idea of folks approaching how it's so much faster, because it actually has 3 people read all in a row, which is why we have suggested this type, because of the range, the read range of it to bring it through quickly and then report on it, as well as capture the face to be used or not used, depending on what the school board decides.
So I know that one thing Brian mentioned a minute ago was the wear a mask, and the flashing light. So I have a 15-year-old, 12-year-old, and a 17-year-old who are all very much ready to get out of the house and go back to school. But all 3 of their opinion is, if I were to walk in and see that, it's like the embarrassment that goes along with the alerting feature. So that can be turned off and on. And I think I think high school kids can probably deal with that a little bit more. Middle school starts to be fragile. Elementary, I definitely don't think alerting should be turned on. So you can turn that stuff off and on per school, per camera, whatever works best. And that's where, like I said, we've got to kind of, a lot of this for us is, if this were, it's going to have to move very fast because of your all's. So one thing I wanted to ask was, we heard September 8th was the proposed go back. Is that still the case? So that puts us where, and I'm from Ashland, so forgive me, is that 8 weeks? I'm not very good at math, so is that 8 weeks or 7.5 weeks, something like that? So like it's we're looking at a lot of deployment, a lot of man hours involved, also dealing with a product that is on extreme high demand. This product was selected to go in over 150 Amazon warehouses across the country. We don't know what right now the availability is about a 3-week lead time on ordering these. So for us, it means there's a lot of back-end work that has to happen regardless. So for us, we want to start to put these plans in place and talk to your principals more. I got a lot of great feedback from the principals when we were doing the walkthrough, but we want to talk to them even more and really make this thing work, because I think every school is going to operate a little bit differently if you do choose to go this route.
You said you have the capability of putting, capability of facial recognition and having data in there of like people's names. Is there any concern on that data being, I don't know which word I'm looking for, but privacy concerns?
Sure.
I mean, is there privacy, Mr. Thomas, could there be any privacy concerns on this type of application on infringing upon anyone's privacy?
Depends on what it's used for, how it's disseminated.
Where's all the data stored at? Is it cloud or is it?
Great question. One of the main reasons we are adamant about not putting it on your network is remove all the risk of breaching into the system. So local to a network video recorder. They're in the school, and actually there's multiple recording units that would be throughout the school. So there's some technical reasons that like tablets can't be on the same recording unit as the camera. You have to separate those from each other. So like GRC, for example, has, I want to tell you 5 total recording units. I'd have to have my spreadsheet in front of me, which I just noticed I didn't have, but I think it's 5 total recording units at GRC. So with that being said, I would tell you that there's no way someone from the outside is going to get into it, because we're not even going to run a network cable and connect it unless someone from Clark County's IT side says, nope, that's tested, that's true, you can 100% do that, which I know that may go even into Frankfurt and everything else. But that's one of the main recommendations why we're not wanting to put it on the network. But also, they will tell you this is not a medical device, and it is not to be sold as a medical device. So they want no, what's the word here? They just don't want anybody to have any false expectations for what the unit is, and that's why that FDA approved temperature screening is to happen in that final read of whoever it is. That's the recommendation for doing that.
If I could just throw it out there too, there's a lot of really good articles now. One of the articles in the presentation is from IU Health. So this is a hospital, and they're really the ones that decided they wanted to keep, for HIPAA reasons, keep everything in a totally isolated network. And then for the confidentiality of student records, we're also recommending it. So hopefully that answers your question.
Mr. Christie, remind me, this week, where's our thoughts on where the temperature of students will take place?
Like we were talking about in these places.
Do we have the option of taking it in the classroom?
They got to come in at the end of the building. And you want to get inside, like these setup, you want to be inside the building.
So the current plan without this is just a platoon of people with, not at the classroom, at the front door.
At the doors or whatever entryway.
Okay.
So what about the bus?
When they come off the bus, when they come in the building.
So they don't have to have their temperature before they get on the
No,
bus?
nope. That was last week.
Not this week.
It's kind of
Not this week.
Not this week.
Nope.
We're getting feedback from other schools that there's a big concern with leaving kids behind in the morning and putting that burden of decision on the bus driver and creating isolation areas within a bus. There's a lot of issues with trying to do it mobile. We were a big fan of trying to do that, but not being able to control the environment before they get on, combined with all of the other issues about the logistics of what happens to the child if they do have a high temp with no guardian. It's made that.
Accuracy also in bus stops is one of the things that came up. And some of the tough realizations, and I think, trying to think which school, I want to tell you that it was GRC's principal that maybe had he had a lot of these concerns. So like some of the tough realizations are, this is going to require staff to run this system. This isn't something that will just be put in and it's just going to do everything for you. So part of the concern to like what your question was is that if I allow everyone to come into the school and all the kids just start walking down the hallway, well, it's kind of not worth any kind of investment because they've all commingled at that point. By the time, I mean, you're not going to know whether or not they were, contracted the disease or anything while they were going into the classroom. So it is better to do it before they ever get into the building, but it's also a good idea to have certain lines set up outside. We were thinking 2 to 3 lines set up outside, a couple staff members making sure the kids, especially high school and middle school kids that are going to be kind of rambunctious in the morning and everything, keeping them social distanced in lines, then telling them which lines to come into. They'll filter through 3 separate lines. And the reason we have 3 separate lines at that is because that's going to be your largest entry point, trying to bring that amount of students. So one of the things we wanted to really make sure we were talking about was some realities that we know that we're dealing with is masks are going to be required. Taking the temperatures is going to be required. It's just how are you going to actually do that? So with what we're proposing to the school board is that if you do this option, and these are some rough numbers that we threw out for you, is I used a number of 3,500 students. Now Brian has your full capacity, which I think that is a very real number to go with, of 5,217 that'll be going in, because hopefully you will get back to 100% full capacity and everyone will be going back to school. And I don't think any of us do know. I've heard you all say this and I think we're all in agreement. I don't know when the normal thing gets back to it. I don't know if it ever will. But I used a number of 3,500 as kind of a starting point. So if we said there's 3,500 students to be screened, and you take an average of how long it's going to take a handheld temperature of every single student that goes through, we're using a number of 6 seconds. It's going to take you 6 seconds to take that student's temperature and actually put that on a report somehow or another. We were thinking, do you all have a spreadsheet of all the students? I think that's more difficult. You're trying to flip through. They're not coming through in alphabetical order. So then you got to do something with that data also. So we think our number is low at 6 seconds, but that's what we used, is 6 seconds. Then we used, initially, he's changed it now, but initially we used a half a second read time, because that is the manufacturer's recommendation, that it takes a half a second to get a read on a student going through. That's what our system is going to do. So if you take 6 seconds per student, that's 540 minutes, it's 9 hours that it's going to take you to get that many students through all the buildings. And staff. We used an estimated fringe labor rate of $40 an hour. We know that it may not be what every staff member and everybody makes, but $40 an hour is what we used, and we said 4 people per line it's going to take to run those stations, and I think that is a very true and realistic number that you need to be looking at. I think 3 to 4 people, maybe even 5, running these lines, and 170 days of school. That's going to have a real cost of $244,800 on it. With the thermal system at a half a second read time, that's 45 minutes, and it's 0.75 hours. You're at $20,400 over the 170-day period. So it's $145,444. I'm mixing my numbers up. Sorry, it's 5.8 hours using the 3,500 students I wrote on this. That's where I messed up, so I'm sorry. It was 5.8 hours using 3,500 students. It's $158,666. Using the thermal, it's 0.48 hours, and it's $13,222. It's a savings of $145,444 of 3,500 students in 1 year. So the total cost of this is, do we need to discuss I'm assuming we need to discuss the financing of this. So it's 800, Brian has a estimated number, I'll give you the true number, and this is with...
If I could jump in there, Bobby.
Go for it.
Forgive me, so the spreadsheet, we were just doing estimates, and this was a worksheet, so he was working off it, so that his numbers are the accurate numbers here, so forgive me if you're seeing a few different numbers here. It's just, we were trying to, because we're taxpayers, because we have children, we're wondering what is the return on investment, how effective is this, do we think this makes sense? And that's why we came up with the idea of putting it in this format to help us think about the costs.
Yeah, so you have I gave you my copy of the proposal. It's roughly $848,000, that's very accurate, but will you tell them what the actual number is?
So So your investment is $848,433.
Total over everything, and what our understanding was out of the meeting was that FEMA covers 75%, the state would cover 12%, leaving you with roughly $110,240 to be paid out of board money. I'm assuming that is accurate. That part I don't know. I haven't looked up the FEMA information. She here that knew all that information.
That's accurate at this time.
Okay.
Where are we getting the FEMA information?
From FEMA. Now, I will say, we have a meeting with FEMA, we've talked to them about this up front. It is an allowable expense according to our representative. They do pay 75 and they expect the state to pay 25. The state's going to pay on our, and here is going to pay 13, they're expecting local to pay 12. That's where they're coming up with the numbers that they're coming up with. Now, what the lady on the phone today, when Mr. Stunt talked to them, would not commit to, I am not the final approval. So we have a meeting with them on Wednesday at 10 o'clock, we're meeting with FEMA. So to get a definite, I can't state to you that I can tell you 100% sure that FEMA will pay this. The lady told us it is a reimbursable item. There are many other districts looking at this, and the figures here are not out of line, they're not anything, it's shocking. But she said, I'm not the one that does the final approval.
And this doesn't affect their federal COVID relief fund, those
Well,
funds, or does it?
You got, I think you all got the sheet, the Alicia sent the sheet.
I thought I saw it.
Yeah, there's, if you,
Oh, it was an email, okay.
an email, if you use this money, it would just about complete the rest of it. It would leave you about $75,000 left in it after, if you.
That's if 100% of the cameras came out of it,
Yeah.
FEMA didn't reimburse us.
Yeah, so that the FEMA money, though, wouldn't affect that. If we got FEMA money back,
That's up and beyond.
That's up in the air right now until we get submission of approval of that expense. But also, I want to just add, and I mentioned this to Mr. Christie, is in a finance meeting that I just had this past Thursday with ADE, we were pretty much told not to bank on that 12%. That there is no guarantee the state's going to have 12% to reimburse all these districts on these FEMA COVID expenses. So pretty much federal FEMA 75%, local 25% is really just from this past Thursday. So even after our meeting, so right now we're looking at the 75-25 split. Now, CARES is an option, but like we just said, it's going to eat that grant up really, really fast, and we're not going to have much of that grant left to use on other things that we kind of already earmarked it for. But that is one source. Other source obviously is contingency. This is not a budgeted item.
how fast would we know the approval?
We'll find out more Wednesday, and I don't know. I just know I've done, as Director of Operations, I've done 2 FEMA board things here, and they're not always real fast. It takes a while to go up the chain and a while to come back down. Now, they were good for every penny they said they would be, but it wasn't something you call them today and you get your money next week.
You
You're
said about a
federal
3-month
government.
period to get reimbursed if it's allowable.
What?
They told us from the state about 3 months once you submit a claim.
Well, Mr. Christie, on the scenario then, scenario A, of GRC, let's try to limit it to that. How many people were you all thinking, how many staff members to
What part of
take
this plan,
right out?
part of this plan that we're going to be looking at starting Wednesday, we'll know exact numbers, but in my conversations with Mr. Bowman, we were probably talking 15 people.
Okay, and this,
In the top 5.
so that's 15 people versus how many people would we require for this system? It seemed like the savings were too big.
You're saying how many people would it take if you were doing hand screens?
Right, he said 15 for hand screens, how many for your system? Because you've got to be able to staff for the exceptions.
I don't think you're going to have any difference. The difference is whether or not you have 15 people standing there for 3 hours or 15 people standing there for half an hour to bring people in. It's the amount of time it's going to take to bring each person through to get the actual screens.
Okay, that number that I threw out there did not include somebody over at the door with the food service coming in, and that was not someone at the back door where the staff coming in.
That'll have to be someone at that. Now, I don't know that that one will actually take, because my understanding, and forgive me, I don't know everything about how the school operates, but my understanding is those drop-offs happen after hours for most of your food deliveries. Is that accurate?
Early hours.
Okay, early hours, so like, typically what's gonna happen there, what we were thinking anyways, would be that we recommended to Billy during our walkthrough that you all get, whoever it is, US Foods or whatever, get their policies that they have in place for their own employees. That way you have a policy on hand of whatever theirs says, so that you've got extra protection, but also, they're just gonna come in and it's gonna be an honor system. I mean, they just need to look at it. If it tells them that they have a fever, they need to leave. But if not, then, I mean, I think that may fall under the kitchen manager's staff. I mean, surely your staff will, if they have a fever, they're gonna report that to someone. Now, it's also gonna log the information, so if they decide not to, it will log and track that. But I think the answer to what you're asking, if I heard it right, was how many is it gonna actually take to staff both systems? And I think the amount of people, I do think you'll use more, not many more with hand pros, but I think it's really the amount of time that they're.
Yeah. So I think that the scenario that we may have all seen is when you walk into a place, you have the person that's doing the read, or they're handing you it, having you read yourself. A lot of confusion, a lot of bunching up, a lot of opportunity for people to not know what to do next. And so you have walk-arounds, you have strays, it's an issue. So the real value proposition is to bring them through efficiently and eliminate the recording piece, because that's really where you get some of these additional staff, and we could potentially eliminate that staff person who's doing this part or handing out the hand sanitizer can be stopped by having stations for hand sanitizer. But if you can imagine, you would at minimum, even with our system, you need a person directing traffic into which lane. The benefit of multi-lane is just like in any movie theater when they have a lane queuing system. If somebody gets a false positive on lane 3, or excuse me, a positive on lane 3, the person is necessary to redirect traffic once he sees that that line has been stopped, and to send the last maybe 2 people that went into that lane back to the other lanes. So now we have 2 lanes, and so school is getting populated as quickly as possible. So on the other side, you're going to need probably 1 person, in our opinion, per monitor, because they're going to have to be the one to direct the student and have the high temperature in the most, as Bobby put it, humane way as possible. We think we could probably do a pretty good job of reducing the amount of people that know that you have a positive through some various steps. So 3 on the back, 1 in the front, 1 on the back, 2 or 3 others. So you see it's not a huge reduction, but it's very much an accuracy and speed thing.
Mr. Christie, do we have to record temperatures by student name now, under the proposed scenario? I hope the answer is no, but I'm asking.
I don't think we have to record by name.
Okay, we just take the temperature, you're good, you're good, you're good, whoop, we need to put you over to have you remeasured.
Then recording starts.
Okay.
That's this week. Yeah, well, that's this week.
The average temperature for a handheld is somewhere in that 3 to 6 seconds range if it's perfect every time, and if they don't touch the forehead and they're not back. So you're up against the time difference between the 2 technologies, even with no record keeping.
What's your ratio right now, what you've got out in buildings right now, the number of people that come in with a high temperature have tested positive for coronavirus?
That's a great question that I don't have an answer for, because I haven't actually reached out to them to get the information. Do you know?
The people that we've talked, we're working with a lot of friendly peers in the industry, and the issue we're having is clients don't want to share their data on that particular issue. It's accuracy and setup, and through the first couple of days, everything's good. The number 1 issue that we had to adjust to quickly was giving people enough time to come into the building and have just a few moments to adjust to ambient, which is 1 to 5 minutes depending on the person. So that issue creates a secondary walkthrough, and that's the one I have the most data of right now, but we're getting more data every day. I'll share as soon as I get more information.
And I guess just going on the only experience I've got, I know in a small company in Winchester, they've had several people that have had high temperatures, they've sent home, they've lost 3 work days, and they come back in 3 days, and they're fine. And high temperature, again, is just one symptom of this, and if you're asymptomatic, you don't have a temperature, you can still give it. I don't know, for us, seems like a pretty high dollar thing for something that may or may not work. I mean, I think it's obviously a great system, and I could see airports, I could see Amazons, I could see those things, but it just seems like to me that it's pretty high dollar and something that we could lose people out. Kids won't be in school, teachers may not be there. We've already got a policy, the CDC's thinking high temperature is really not that great of a deal because in 3 days they're letting you come back anyway if your temperature is lowered. So I don't know, just to me, it seems like it's an awful lot of cost and there's gonna be an awful lot of unknowns up here right now that we're not seeing right now that we may be able to use that money for.
So if I could ask you on that, so if you took a hand temperature of someone and they were high, what do you have to do with them at that point?
Well, what I'm saying there is that's costing us $8,000.
Is it though?
I mean, yeah, I think so. I think, you're overestimating greatly how long it's gonna take us to get kids in the building with a thermometer. I really do. Just based on the way I've seen high schools work with metal detectors, of which they won't have as many metal detectors as when we had thermometers. To me, it seems like not very cost efficient for us, and that's just my opinion.
Yeah, the studies that we have done and the clients that we've deployed, the main push has also been not only the students, but the safety of the staff who are having to come in very close proximity. And then again, you're going to be at least quadruple. Because this isn't bringing in 5 people, even 50 people to my office.
And that's a good point with the staff there. But it still seems like, gosh, there's so many things we don't know what's going to happen. There's only so much money. And then Ms. Ellis is saying KDE's always saying, I don't know whether we're going to have that or not. The state's going to run out of money. They can't print money.
I kind of disagree a little bit with your stance on that. I think it could be, I think we need to look at it a little bit more. I'd love to see if you could send us maybe the presentation that you had. When it comes to safety and security and the school system, I think if we could help alleviate some of the concerns that students and teachers may have by having a more sophisticated solution other than a handheld device that if you don't hold it just directly correct or hold it too far out, I don't find those things very reliable.
Bunch of people like that.
Yeah.
What about if a kid's coughing in your class? That's a symptom just like.
We're talking about taking the kid's temperature. That's all we're talking about, taking the temperature.
That's what I'm saying.
That's all we're doing. And if we can expedite, if FEMA covers 75% of that, and we can expedite kids getting in classes quicker to learn than standing in line, I think it's a valuable thing to look at.
I think, and I understand your point. I promise I do. I have 5 total children, all in school. I'm a taxpayer. I take it very serious, especially putting my kids back in school. But I do think there's truth in the numbers, and the numbers are not going to lie to us. And maybe our number is high on what your labor rate is. Maybe our number is a little bit high on the estimated amount of time that it's going to take to read. I don't think that it is. I've taken my temperature right here actually before, and here's what we did. I took it, or actually Brian took it, then he handed it to me, which means if he had it, he just passed it to me because we just shared the thermometer, which is not a good option to be passing around thermometers. So if we designate that staff person, they're in front of it all day long, in front of the virus, but still, they still have to. Let's just, if you just take it, hold it up, 1, 2, down, check. I think I'm at 4 in what I just did, probably. So if we just take that 4 seconds and we say our number's high, it's a true dollar amount that you have. You're paying your staff to do this because I think we all are in agreement, unless someone can tell me I'm wrong. We have to take their temperatures coming into the school some way or another. So there's a true dollar amount over a period of time. And what I'm saying is with our numbers, we're showing you that in 6 months, based on what you're going to pay your salaries, you're going to pay for this system, which most anybody I've ever dealt with in business would tell you that anything you can do with an ROI of 2 years or less is kind of a win-win on that situation. Now, that's just my opinion, but I don't know. I do think that there's a true number that's going to go with salaries and what you're going to be paying people to run this system.
Miss Ashley, it's 9:09. I'd like to suggest we ask them.
Sure.
If they send us the presentation, send us the data on on their calculations of how this might pay itself back. And then we take a temperature reading from there.
Do you have people, you have no schools that
I
are
like the
using it,
pun.
right? No schools yet.
There's none in the state of Kentucky that I'm aware of that are doing it yet.
What is, what's KSBA, they have any comment on this technology?
I don't think not
Yeah.
So to say just real quickly though, it's one of those things that it's like everything else.
Oh.
Everybody is looking at
I know.
it. They haven't deployed it yet,
Yeah.
but everybody is looking at some kind of way to automate.
So do you
fever
have a
detection.
factory that you?
We do. We've got our own office. We've got a factory, a distribution center that's deployed it. We've got, we have an office in Florida also.
A bunch of people in our network have deployed it. Just so you know, we're family owned and operated for the last 34 years. One of our biggest concerns is should we even offer this? And until we got it in our office and it was working, and until we had the first one deployed and it was working, that was something we were very serious about. So definitely functional. And I can invite anyone on the board to come by our office and walk in and get yourself screened for your temperature.
Would you want it back on Monday night's agenda?
Yeah, I think it gives us time to review the information
And then you'll have time to talk to them.
Is your proposal, does it include all the schools, including preschool?
It's got all 12 buildings. So it has maintenance, bus garage, preschool, and that was something we were talking, we don't know if it needs to be in every building. Like, we don't know if it's got central office, so it has everything in the proposal. Plus it has it has 3 years of service and everything built into it. So you guys really don't have anything to worry about for 3 years once the system is put in. So, and yes, you can remove certain buildings or schools out of it. It has Phoenix Academy in it. That's just 2 tablets is what we had there, so a lot smaller environment. But we can definitely get you the ROI sheet, the presentation, and then any other information that you request with me. Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board.
This time, somebody like to make a motion to adjourn to closed session. Our KRS 61.810, subsection 1K, meetings with federal or state laws specifically required to conduct in privacy preliminary discussions with the superintendent's evaluation per KRS 156.557.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Chrysler. Second by Ms. Richardson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes 5-0, and we will take a 5-minute recess while PM. Are you recording that? Okay, so we need to note that there was no action taken in closed session. Now we need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Scott Heisel. Second.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Talley. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 5-0. We are adjourned at 11:42 PM.